Welcome to Southern Sense Talk on Rumble. You are going to love Annie the Radio Chickadee Ubelis and her co-host, C.S. Bennett. You'll find them live here on Fridays from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Date Time. Check out their website at Southern Sense, as in commonsense.net. It's that easy, southernsense.net. So sit back and relax. They're informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey.
All right, and welcome back to another adventure here on Southern Sense. I'm your hostess with the least mostest, Annie the Chickadee, along with the vivacious and oh so intellectual co-host, Hannah Davis. Good afternoon, Hannah. How are you?
All right. How are you?
I'm holding on in there. Holding on. It's been a crazy week. A crazy week. So much is going on, and it's just like every single time you listen to the news or walk past the TV, something else is blowing up. And I have never known a news cycle as I have seen under Donald Trump.
Yeah, and we're only 4 months into the year, so.
Well, we got 1 year under our belt.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you never know what to expect, though, with this administration.
No. And he's in the pissing contest with the Pope. And, well, just to say that I was raised Roman Catholic and I'm currently Anglican.
Okay, yeah. Anglican's good. That's the Americanized version is Episcopal, right? And I attended an Episcopal church.
No, we used to be united with the Episcopal, but the Episcopal went woke.
They did go woke. A lot of them are, I think. But when I lived right outside of DC, I would see Baptist churches that were really woke too. And I think a lot of it comes down to their proximity to a woke hub. Yeah, or DC. Yeah. So, but no, I attended an Episcopal church, and it seems very normal. Actually, it's the most Catholic seeming Episcopal church I've ever attended. So.
Well, that must be one of the ones that were still conservative, because at one point Anglican and Episcopal were under one umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And when they started going really, really woke, there was a huge legal battle, especially here in South Carolina, where they were actually trying to take our properties.
Oh, okay.
And the bishop of the Episcopal Church that was spearheading the fight against us threatened to turn our church, which was established in 1712, into a mosque.
Oh, yeah. And what's difficult about that is Anglican churches are hard to find. There's one in my hometown, but I haven't seen one out here in Tennessee. They're really hard to find. They're kind of niche, but so far our church is not woke. I think it really comes down to the diocese and the bishop presiding over that geographic location, because you find an Episcopal church in DC or any church really in DC or New York City, and they're woke as a joke. So we need to keep politics out of religion for sure.
Well, there's a yes and a no to it, because at one point the preachers from the pulpit were the ones that helped ignite our Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
So you think about that. How far would we have gotten into a revolution against England if we didn't have the preachers from the pulpit? Matter of fact, one preacher ended up serving in the Revolutionary Army, and there's a famous portrait of him being killed in battle.
Okay.
And there's also the Red Robe Regiment, which is highly conservative and trying to bring the faith back to the people. But if you think about it, the pro-life movement, religiously founded, the anti-wokeism is believing God made a man and a woman. He didn't make 57 different flavors of vanilla, and in many ways, it does come down to your faith, which were the founding principles of this nation. So, I mean, a lot of us can say, can we keep the politics out of the pulpit? I don't think so, honestly. But if it's taught in a biblical sense, in matching with the gospel, and explaining why we believe what we believe, and showing how we should keep our country on the track our founders placed for us.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why it takes faith. It takes a strong faith,
Mm-hmm.
and you sent me two articles that I had been already following and screaming at the TV over them. You didn't include the one about New York City, but we have out there in California the new process for sex change procedures for illegal aliens, followed by up in Massachusetts along the same lines. Oh, but we'll give you a free spa massage and a gift card and sex change procedure. I got that same article printed twice.
It's insane. When you think of, I don't know why we can't just meet in the middle. There's some people who think that the illegal aliens that are here should stay and that they should receive services because of their socioeconomic. That's one thing to believe that. But it's another thing to say, hey, these illegal aliens that are here of a lower socioeconomic, let's go ahead and get them their sex change surgeries too. That's just moving the goalpost so far, it's not even on the field anymore. And that's what California is doing. And mind you, California for fiscal year 26 and 27, they are in a $20 billion deficit. Governor Newsom doesn't know what to do about it. And so they're trying to cut funding from certain programs. But this program where these homeless illegal aliens in California are receiving what they call gender affirming care. I read an article. It's the one I sent you. This reporter, he went to 3 different homeless shelters, and one of them was fully dedicated to this cause. That's basically all they do is hormone treatments, breast implants, transgender surgeries, and it's all for illegal aliens. And it's just insane to think that these people are receiving this type of care just because they're here illegally. And it's all done on the taxpayer's dime. And then, you say, hey, okay, it's one thing that's a California issue. We've always known they're woke as a joke, right? But then you go to Boston, who is woke, but arguably not as woke as California. And Mayor Wu out there, Michelle Wu, she's given these illegal aliens these voucher cards ranging between $200 and $500. And they're for these like wellness allowances, allowing gay and transgender illegal aliens to go and get free massages or go to salons or get gym memberships. And it's just like, what are we doing here? We have lost the plot. It's one thing to say illegal aliens should be getting housing stipends or daycare accessibility. It's one thing. That's a completely understandable logic like thing, but I think all logic is just thrown out the window when you're talking about giving them, why are they getting gym memberships on the taxpayer dime? Why are we giving, transgender surgeries on the taxpayer dime? And Boston also is in a $50 million deficit. So, I mean, make that make sense.
Yeah. It's funny because when you start breaking it down, what it costs you as an individual taxpayer to do all these woke programs, and what are we getting? There was one gentleman I was watching on the news earlier today, and they're on the Texas border, both of them law enforcement. And what they're saying is that we saw this happening back in the 70s, early 80s, when we had the Mariel boat lift. And these boatloads of Cubans that were, the jail cells were thrown wide open. So we got the human refuge, honestly. So there was a handful, yes, that came here as true refugees, but the vast majority were not. And here, 50 years later, we're still dealing with that debacle.
Yeah.
So what are we going to be dealing with 50 years from now with what they have done with illegal aliens here nationwide?
Yeah.
And these sanctuary cities. The cost to us is going to hit a point where there is no return, and the United States will forever be broken.
That's exactly right. I mean, and then in 50 years from now, what are we going to be doing for American citizens? American citizens who are homeless. We're not doing anything for them now. Boston, we
much
mentioned
less
Boston.
Our veterans.
Exactly.
Much less our veterans.
That's a great point. And Boston is the second, I believe, has the second highest homeless rate for any major city in the U.S. And the majority of them are U.S. citizens. Some of them are veterans. And I can tell you right now, they're not getting a fraction of the care that we're giving to illegal aliens. Illegal aliens are a protected class, unfortunately, and something the pendulum does swing between administrations when it comes to enforcing immigration law. And the pendulum does swing in major cities like sanctuary cities, like Boston. But it seems that the pendulum's swinging and these sanctuary cities just keeps going left and never swings to the right anymore, or even the center. They're putting so much money and giving so much regard to these illegal aliens that I just feel like all tax-paying citizens, homeless or not, are just cast to the wayside, and something's got to give. So I can't imagine in 50 years what Boston's going to look like. That's for sure.
No, what's your son going to be looking at 50 years from now?
Who knows?
Where he is now a parent or possibly grandparent at that point. And what does the future of your future generations going to look like?
And what are his taxpayer dollars going to go towards? You know, I mean, at what point are we? I mean, where does it stop? Are we going to start applying? You know, if the illegal alien's dog is also illegally present, do they get free dog food? Like, what are we doing? When does it stop? You know, so.
You know, it's funny. I got into a little conversation. There's a thing similar to Facebook called Nextdoor. It just deals with your local neighborhood. And this one woman was saying that she had gone down a street that I'm very familiar with, the street that the veteran is on. So all my kitty cats go to this one vet on this one street, so I know it like the back of my hand. And she was saying that she was trying to go down the street. And it's a single lane in either direction. It's a narrow road. And this woman was jogging in the road, not on the shoulder, but in the road. And when she slowed down to like 10 miles an hour, trying to find a space where she can swing around this individual safely, the woman turns around and curses her out, giving her the finger.
Because she swerved? Would she rather been hit?
I don't know. But the woman that was trying to give her room, that was driving, was trying to also avoid a car hitting her head on that was coming onto the road.
Yeah.
So she's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. But she did slow down and give her enough room to not interfere with her jog. But the woman was so arrogant. And someone posted in response, well, in your semi-rural beachfront, maybe we need to have sidewalks and bike paths on every block. First off, I'm not near a beach. I'm on an island, yes, but it's all swamp. It's all marsh around us. You can't go digging your toes into the sand. You're digging your toes into fluff mud and have fun trying to dig them out. Or you're stepping on top of an oyster bed. You know, I'm sorry. So I said, what? Oh, you talking about New York, where you have a sidewalk on every block, a bicycle path on every street? This is not
Who's going to pay for it?
Well, that's exactly it. So I said, you think about that. You want to put a sidewalk everywhere or a multi-use path for bicycles too. Well, we have drainage ditches. We don't have underground pipes. We have drainage ditches. They can range anywhere from 6 to 8 feet in width, right? That's on our property, right? Part of it's on the right of way, but it's mostly on our property. So you take and put a sidewalk there. What are you going to do about the drainage ditch when we have the hurricanes coming through?
Yeah.
I said, what are you going to do about the fall in tax value on the property when you take all this property away from us? The value of the property is going to drop. The amount of taxes you're going to collect is going to drop. And what are they going to do? Where are they going to make it up? Plus, you've got to maintain this sidewalk besides the construction of it. So how can you make up the difference? Oh, that's right. You're going to raise the taxes on everyone else countywide. They don't think about that. And I said, furthermore, once you take that space off of that person's property, that's eminent domain. And to me, that's basically stealing.
It is.
That person loses that whole front of their property. And in some cases, it puts the sidewalk almost on their front doorstep.
Yeah.
Where are they going to park their cars?
Yeah.
Because whatever had 4-car driveway may have only 1 or 2 cars fit in it. So what are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
They don't think of the consequences of these actions. And we're finding that with the illegal aliens and these sanctuary cities. They don't think about the consequences. They're looking only for the votes. So that's my rant.
Yeah, they're looking for handouts on their on their end. They're looking for handouts, and then the sanctuary politicians and jurisdictions, all they care about is the votes. So, and the reworking of districts and getting those people counted in the census. That's all they care about. And I think it just comes from a sense of entitlement. Reading these articles about these really, really woke as a joke benefits that we're giving these transgender illegal aliens. A lot of them have said that it's not just centralized, not just them that are there in that city that happen to know what, these benefits are doing for them. They send word back to Honduras, back to Mexico. It's a network, and these individuals know that if they come to California or if they go to Boston or any other woke jurisdiction, that they're going to get paid, that they're going to get these transgender surgeries on the taxpayer dime, no questions asked.
Or they just turn around and say, well, I want to do this. Let me do the therapy, and never actually go through with it, but they get all the benefits at the same time. They can milk the system on both ends here too.
Yeah.
And I find it strange that
I'm sure
Trump, I think, I don't know if he did it through an executive order, but he's saying to Catholic charities, we're yanking your funding. And this is something on this show I talked about a long time ago. And I don't know if I did speak with you about it when you were with Heritage, but these NGOs, these non-government organizations, they get tons of our tax dollars, tons of it.
Yeah.
And it goes, and every single illegal alien that they turn around and help, they get, I think at one point when I was talking about that, it was something like $10,000 a body.
Oh, it's insane.
It is absolutely insane. And you think about the millions that have come across over the last, not just the last 10 years. You can go all the way back to the 1980s, while these organizations were just racking up dollar after dollar and processing the people, getting them food stamps, getting them government housing or a motel room in New York City, the welfare, everything, medical care, every single thing that should be an American taxpayer benefit, but it's given to an illegal alien, which cuts back our benefits that we've already paid for with our tax dollars.
And they have these really nice sounding names like Catholic Charities. That doesn't sound like it's going to be a bad thing, right? But their intention's actually much more insidious than what they want to come across as. These Catholic Charities, these NGOs, they send these flyers to people and they target certain demographics that are known to make charitable donations, that are of a certain age, and they use them. They think it's just helping people, and maybe helping spread the gospel at the same time, but it's not. It's such a calculated organization. They receive FEMA grant money, and a lot of that money is subsidized by the American taxpayer, and then they use that money to aid and abet the, especially in the previous administration, the open borders crisis. And so what they do is they funnel them in, they act as a shelter, they give them clothes, they give them phones, they give them food, they give them money to help with their legal services to get immigration status confirmed, and they send them on their way. And so it's just like a funnel. It's like, and so I like to call it, back in the day when DHS was under Mayorkas, I used to call it the Mayorkas migration machine, because it was just it was like, all the gears were just working in tandem with one another, and it was successful. They were wildly successful, and they still are. I was actually driving downtown Clarksville. There's a Catholic Charities here. I knew there was one in Nashville, but I didn't know there was one 40 minutes away in my town. And so they're everywhere. And what they do is they just funnel in these migrants, and they give them so many things that the government would laugh if an American citizen asked for one of those things. And so it's just absolutely wild. And the whole time we're paying for it.
Yeah. Now, meanwhile, you're saying Catholic Charities or a lot of these other organizations that have some form of charity in their name, they already get donations from private citizens.
Yeah.
And from their congregations, they're getting massive money. So they're getting it on both ends. They're getting our tax dollars and they're getting our donations.
Yeah.
So they're making money hand over fist. And I know I've told this story, I haven't said this in a long time, but I tell the story about, we get a call one day to a church that was burglarized, a Roman Catholic church. So we show up on the scene, and the office was burglarized and vandalized. And so the safe was ripped open, and we asked what was in the safe. And as soon as we asked that question, and we looked at the debris on the floor, it was very obvious that they were processing illegal green cards for illegal aliens.
I think that's something.
They were forging the green cards in the Catholic Charities office. In the church.
Yeah, I believe it. It's an underground movement, but it's really not. I mean, at the end of the day, you can look up multiple articles on these NGOs. Catholic Charities is just, they're kind of the household name of NGOs. Everybody knows who they are. But I mean, what they're doing, you can go and look at where this FEMA grant money is going for housing, and communities, and you can see where it's funneling, and you can see, not all Catholic charities get the same amount. Depends on, the amount of migrants in their region, and you can see where the money's going and what it's going to, and their agenda, and it's insane. I mean, if the government is going to take our tax dollars and put it back into the community, why not put it into the communities with this American citizens? Why not give it to the veterans? Why not give it to the single mother who is down on her luck and she found herself in a homeless shelter? Why are we giving it to migrants? I mean, it's one thing to give them a blanket or a hot meal, but these sex changes, these legal aid, putting them at workforce aid, it's just insane. While we've got people scrounging, American citizens scrounging to try and afford their hospital bills or to try and find a good job, and we've got migrants just like kicking them to the curb, and they're getting to jump the line. So it's one thing, these illegal aliens have jumped the line when it comes to entering illegally, and so they've already pissed off all the legal immigrants, right? And then they come here and expect more handouts, and then what's worse is we're giving them to them. And so it just incentivizes and fuels this machine, this migration machine. And so it's we're blessed that the border's shut down right now, but we still got to deal with the migrants who came in under the previous administration. And it looks like they're still being funded in these jurisdictions.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll put a stop to it. But before we go any further, I want to remind everyone that we do start off each show with a dedication to a fallen hero. And today's dedication is going to go out to Deputy Sheriff Steven Bruner of the Calhoun County in Florida, after suffering a medical emergency while assisting with evacuations during a wildfire. His end of watch was March 21st of this year. And here's his dedication.
Christian County 911 received a call about a deputy down in the roadway near the intersection of Highway 160 and Glossop Avenue in Highlandville. At 4:05 p.m., responding deputies arrived and found Deputy Gabriel Ramirez fatally shot laying in the roadway. At 4:09 p.m., a possible suspect vehicle was identified, and at 4:13 p.m., the Missouri State Highway Patrol with Stone County deputies and multiple other agencies responded to an address off of Y Highway in the Galena area. 4:35 p.m., the Missouri State Highway Patrol issued a blue alert, and an intense manhunt was launched for the suspect, who we identified as Richard Byrd, age 45, of Stone County. At that time, investigators released a booking photo taken from a previous arrest on February 16th of this year from the Stone County Jail and released that. After further investigation, the suspect's vehicle was located in an area off of Highway 248 and 160 near the Reed Springs area. Multiple deputies and agencies responded at that time to the area, and a manhunt ensued and lasted approximately 9 hours. At 11:30 p.m. last night, there was a sighting of the suspect reported in a wooded area near the 2500 block of Highway 248. Multiple agencies responded to that area, along with the Missouri State Highway Patrol aircraft unit. And at 11:38 p.m., law enforcement started taking gunfire from the suspect in the wooded area. At that time, Deputy Josh Wall, sustained a debilitating gunshot wound to the leg. Also at that time, Webster County Deputy Austin McCall sustained 4 gunshot wounds. Responding law enforcement could not reach the injured deputies at that time due to continued gunfire from the suspect. After taking multiple rounds of gunfire from the suspect, law enforcement was eventually able to rescue the injured deputies. During that time, Christian County Deputy Michael Highslope suffered a fatal gunshot wound while he was attempting to reach and rescue the downed deputies. Deputies Wall and McCall were both transported to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. At that time, law enforcement utilized an armored vehicle to approach the suspect, who continued to fire upon law enforcement. Multiple law enforcement officers exchanged gunfire with the suspect and ultimately eliminated the threat. At that time, the Sheriff's Critical Incident Team responded and is currently still investigating that crime scene. Deputies Wall and McCall are recovering from surgery, and they're both in stable condition at the hospital right now. I want to thank all the responding agencies from this incident. As you will hear, there are multiple agencies from across southwest Missouri and the state. The Christian County Sheriff's Office, the Ava Police Department, the Ozark Police Department, the Nixa Police Department, Reed Spring Police Department, the Missouri State Highway Patrol, the Greene County Sheriff's Office, Stone County Sheriff's Office, Douglas County Sheriff's Office, the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office, the Webster County Sheriff's Office, the Taney County Sheriff's Office, the U.S. Marshal Service, the ATF, the FBI, and the Missouri State Park Rangers, as well as the Missouri Department of Conservation.
Heartbreak in the Florida Panhandle tonight as Calhoun County grapples with both a devastating wildfire and the sudden loss of a local hero. The Mossy Pond fire has now scorched 500 acres. While containment is at 80%, the damage is extensive. 19 dwellings and 7 outbuildings are gone, leaving 43 residents displaced and 1 person injured. But the community is mourning a deeper loss. 40-year-old Deputy Steven Bruner, known to everyone here as Big Country, passed away Saturday. After spending hours working the front lines, directing traffic, and pulling neighbors to safety, Bruner suffered a fatal medical emergency shortly after his shift ended.
Bruner is being remembered as a man with a heart even bigger than his stature. He leaves behind 2 children and a girlfriend.
Funeral services are set for this Friday at 2 p.m. As a countywide burn ban remains in effect, officials urge any impacted residents to contact emergency operations for support.
People are going to miss him. He's going to leave a hole at the sheriff's office and in this community.
Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, we led with grace. Let it be seen, from sea to shining sea, beautiful America, living our legacy. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be known as people of honor, humble and bold, faithful through fire. Let us hold firm to our convictions with wide shore. When our time has come, we gave them hope. We made them strong. Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, yeah. We led with grace. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother. Oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation. For all the next generation. Let it be said. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother. Oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation. For all the next generation.
All right, and we are back. Thank you for putting up with it. I mixed up the videos. I part of last week's dedication in the front end with today's dedication, so I apologize to that. So the dedication was for Deputy Sheriff Steven Bruner of Calhoun County, Florida. That we do a dedication to all of our heroes, be they from the Revolutionary War forward, be they military, be they first responders, law enforcement, firefighters, emergency services, and to those special Americans that have served our nation in times of need. God bless each and every one of these heroes. That said, we've got our next victim up here. I don't know if she's kind of like a little dubious. She's looking at the TV camera going, oh, do I really want to do this?
We've had her
Am
on,
I?
we've had her on
Am I?
before.
I think so. I pretty
Yeah.
do think so. Good afternoon, Darlene. Darlene Sanchez with the Epoch Times, or I like to say Epic Times.
Hi, how are you?
I have had you on before, have I?
Yes.
All right, because this is now 16 years doing it. I forget after a while.
I think it was last year.
Yeah, it's possible. But you know Hannah also with FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. She was also formerly with Heritage, but they kidnapped her.
They did.
And actually, one of the articles I was reviewing for this interview is something that you quoted from FAIR, which Hannah had worked on.
Yeah, she did her research.
Yeah.
Definitely I call upon FAIR.
Yeah.
Oh, man. One of the things that's heavy in the news, and this is an item that wasn't really reported a lot, they started touching on the birthright citizenship because Trump showed up at SCOTUS back on April Fool's Day, of all days. And just also recently, I think it was about maybe a week or so ago, there was a flight from Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica, that landed in Kennedy Airport, New York. And a woman gave birth on board the plane, which brought into question the citizenship of the child. That's going to be interesting to find out how that plays out.
Yeah.
Darlene, your any questions?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's exactly right. Those are the kind of cases I think that, the birthright citizenship case before the courts are going to decide. I mean, if you're, I guess if she actually had the baby while the plane was in U.S. airspace, that's a great question because that's even a little more different than what we're typically dealing with. I'm sure there's been situations like that in the past.
Yeah.
But I would imagine if it's in U.S. airspace, it probably counts.
Probably.
It could, because this actually happened on April 3rd, just 2 days after Trump was at SCOTUS. And the question is where she gave birth. Was it in U.S. airspace or was it international territory? So that's what they're trying to figure out. Because they're supposed to keep logs about the longitude and latitude when they're coming through. So it should be marked at the time she gave birth. Whether or not the pilot did it, that's the big question.
Yeah.
It
Easy to
could be-
forge.
Yeah. Obviously, she had a tourist visa from what I was reading in the article. And Caribbean Air, I didn't know they changed the name. I used to own a travel agent at one point. It used to be BWIA, British West Indies Airline. Now it's called Caribbean Airline. And they don't let anyone on if they're beyond 32 weeks in pregnancy.
You know what? I remember something about that, actually. I remember talking to someone, a friend, and they were talking about there were limitations. Some of the airlines didn't want you on, if you're past so many weeks. I think you're correct on that. So I don't know. Maybe the rules are different there.
A lot of birth tours, though, they conceal their pregnancy. So, they try to get through customs without scrutiny. So it could have been that, she wasn't actually anticipating giving birth. Did it say that she was extremely early, or was she right on time? Because
they didn't state. They just said she received the proper medical attention from the crew and then on the ground.
I mean, you see it in movies, right?
Yeah.
What I found funny is the statistics is that between 1929 and 2018, there were 74 in-flight births. Of course, 73 commercial flights. So I gather someone gave twins. Of those, 71 did survive. So it's pretty interesting because it's not something you find very common. And how this plays into birthright citizenship is going to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Darlene, your article was really good. The one you mentioned FAIR, but you mentioned for immigration studies as well, and it was written really well, and it was something that I had thought about, but I hadn't seen much coverage on. What are the fiscal impacts if we get rid of birthright citizenship? And so can you tell us a little bit, maybe like the gist for our listeners of what you were trying to touch on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got to thinking about that. So what would it really mean? And there's, two trains of thought that it would be another deterrent, right? Certainly it would save the federal government billions of dollars. That's what's spent on, children that are born here, even if their parents are not here legally, because right now that's the way it's treated, correct? Mm-hmm. So, we're talking about welfare, we're talking about, schooling, early childhood, all kinds of different benefits that the family gets simply because the child is born here in the United States. So what would happen then? Let's say that, it's determined that, birthright citizenship isn't, or that the Supreme Court goes along with, Trump's order, and that it's moving forward, it's no longer the case. You can't claim that. Well, what it's going to mean then is states that want to continue to fund these programs, it would be up to them to do so. So it wouldn't necessarily go away. It would just be more money out of the state budgets, and of course, probably passed on to the citizens of those states, right? Some states, of course, would choose not to do it or maybe reduce it. It's hard to say, of course, at this point, what would happen. But it would save the federal government money, that's for sure. So federal taxpayers wouldn't have to be footing that bill. Then it would be up to the states if they wanted to do it. Now, the arguments are that, of course, that, the two sides are that, well, this is a deterrent. But as the other side points out, this is something that wouldn't happen for probably, it wouldn't happen for 21 years until the person came of age that could actually help their family become citizens. That's one of the arguments, that this, is a draw. So when these children grow up, they can actually just get their family citizenship that way. Mm-hmm. But, some people point out that's a really long time. Most people come here for economic reasons. But of course, if you come here for economic reasons, that is not a reason that you would be accepted for asylum to begin with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I think it's got to do a lot with money at this point. And a lot of the states that filed, amicus briefs in this case are arguing how much money this is going to cost them. So I think, that's really a big thing here. It's the money. I'm not so sure that the Supreme Court is going to, side with Trump on this. It didn't sound like it. Sounded pretty dubious. But they might kick it back. My understanding is they're probably going to kick it back to, Congress and say, it's up to you guys to decide this. It's not something in the purview of the, executive branch, but it's something that, needs to be clarified. And I do think that, I think the arguments that, that it's been abused, I think are solid. For example, in the article it's talking about, there's actually, birthright tourism. A lot of Chinese nationals have come here, had babies, take the babies back to China. And I believe there was some people, communist leaders bragging, or communist executives bragging that, one day their kid could run for president of the United States. So do we want that? That's a huge question. So I think it's not just a simple cut and dried, how much is this going to cost? I think it's got to do with how's the system been used and has it been abused? So hopefully the Supreme Court will come down on that and at least give the United States some more clarity on it.
Well said, yeah.
Because you mentioned the tourism, something that we've been harping on ever since it gave birth, starting in California. And your article says that there's now 250,000 of these babies born a year from illegal parents. And the 14th Amendment is very clear, that they must be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So if you're here on a tourist visa, you're still subject to the jurisdiction of the country that you came from, be it China or Haiti or whatever. You're not subject to the jurisdiction only in so much as breaking the law, jaywalking or whatever they want to hit you with. That doesn't make you an illegal alien, but that does not mean that your visa makes you the subject of all American law. And it does not make you a citizen or your child a citizen. And this is where we see the huge fight. How do you define subject of the jurisdiction thereof?
Yeah, I think that's the crux of it. There's been a lot of legal, debate about that. And I think rightly so, because that's basically President Trump's point is, somebody comes over here illegally, why should they be rewarded with their child being able to be a U.S. citizen, which is, he's the consummate businessman. He's like, that's worth a lot of money. That's a great benefit. Why would a country give that away for free? And of course, many countries, Western countries such as Britain, France, and Australia have changed their laws. They used to have the same type of laws, but over the past several decades, they've changed that. So they no longer have birthright citizenship in most of these countries. But anyway, subject to. So there's the argument that, okay, if you're here, you are subject, even if you're a tourist, you're still subject to our laws. That's one argument. But others would say, no, not in the sense that it gives you rights. You do have, of course, some limited rights, but you don't have the full rights of citizenship. Normally, nobody considers that. So that's where, that's where the Supreme Court, where the pavements, the rubber hits the pavement right there, is if they come out and actually define what that means. And that's going to be a huge thing. But like I said, they may not. They may just kind of kick it down the road and say this is up to Congress.
Yeah, they spent a lot of time talking about domicile, jurisdiction. What does it mean? What were the framers' intentions? How has that been interpreted over the decades that's passed? And it is interesting to see. I remain hopeful. I remain optimistic. And I've been sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for the other shoe to drop sometime probably in June regarding their ruling. But I don't know. You don't seem as optimistic. We had someone else. What was his name, Annie? We've had him a few times from Epoch, and he wasn't optimistic either. But fair, we think that we'll at least get 5 of the justices on our side. So maybe it's a pipe dream. But
was that Robert Bork Jr.? I think that might have been Robert Bork.
I think his name started with an R. I can't remember. We have him on quite often, but I don't know. I try to remain optimistic. You watch the mainstream media and they're going to say, no one's going to side with it. But I think at the worst, it could get kicked back to Congress. And that might be very well may be where it needs to go. See what we can do there. See what traction we can get there.
Yeah. I think that, I definitely think that, there is a chance. There is, especially, like if they go ahead and decide or, clarify exactly what it means, subject to the jurisdiction of. But I don't know, just from listening to their arguments, they didn't seem very inclined to go the route that President Trump wants to go. But maybe you can't ever tell, of course.
Yeah.
Well, we need Clarence Thomas and Alita to smack some sense into their heads.
Mm,
You know, my mind is going in 15 different directions, but I'm thinking about the birth tourism that started with California, and a lot of these kids now are in their teens that were born through this tourism from the Chinese Communist Party. So now, when you mentioned becoming running for president, and they're bragging about that. That's not too far down the road, that possibility, because if you remember correctly, I'm sure you do, that when they were issuing the birth certificates, they didn't put down the nationality of the parents. All they just said the date and time and place of birth here in the United States. So how do you track the genealogy back to prove that this was a tourist birth and not a legitimate citizen?
mm.
That's a good
So
question.
there's
That,
some administrative things that, yeah. So I don't know. I think, well, obviously, if someone looks ethnic, that can draw into question. But you can't assume someone's citizenship off of how they look. So if there's no paper trail, then there's no paper trail. So, and at the end of the day, under the current laws, they are a citizen. So there's no need to prove that they're not. So it's tricky. Like I said, I remain optimistic, but I am optimistic about another article you wrote about fentanyl being 60% down at the border. So how is that? Are the cartels actually going broke, Darlene? Is that what it's looking like?
well, that's what they're saying. I mean, because, basically what's happened is there's been, because of law enforcement efforts and, pressure from the Trump administration, pressure from the military, there along the border, going after these kingpins, these drug runners, very aggressively. The amount of fentanyl just hasn't been getting into the country like it was. So what they're saying then is, yeah, they're going broke. And it's also, they're having to use the supply of fentanyl that they do have and, basically be more stingy with it, mix less of it into the street drugs, therefore saving a lot of American lives. You've read about how the deaths of fentanyl, deaths have been going down over the past few years. Well, that's what they think, is likely the reason is because, it's just harder to get a hold of now. So they're just cutting it more. When you say cut it, they mix baby powder, sugar, whatever they can find, with fentanyl and mix it all in there. Make the people buying it think, they're getting, their full dose, but of course they're not.
Mm.
So that's saving lives, actually.
Yeah, and the end run, for sure.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you cover is Texas, the great state of Texas. And there have been several attempts to bring Islam into the forefront in Texas. There was that Epicenter that they wanted to build that, as I understand, has been killed. So you will not have a no-go zone in Texas. There has been the group of women that went to a local high school without permission and into the cafeteria, handing out hijabs and the Quran and Sharia law pamphlets and stuff like that. But there's also now a Sharia law tribunal in Texas that the Attorney General is going absolutely bonkers over, saying we are not going to live under Sharia law. This is the United States. But I noticed that a lot of these attempts to bring the heart of Islam into the United States, they're focusing on Texas of all places.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with, pushback concerning Sharia law, concerning, a lot of Middle Eastern immigrants have settled here. That's part of it. The population, while, not very high in terms of the whole population of Texas, we've got about 31 million people here, about roughly 300,000 to 400,000 are Muslims. So, between 1% and 2%, it has gone up pretty much dramatically. They said it was, 1%. Now it's 2%. That's the most recent data I've seen. So there's an expansion of these types of mosques of Islam here in the Metroplex areas of Texas. There's always been a population here, but it's just like with anything else, like attracts like, right? So if you know that this has a big thriving or, a fairly decent thriving Muslim community, then, and you're a new person to this, a new Muslim to America, or you've converted, or whatever, happens to be your case, you probably want to move somewhere where you are surrounded by people, of similar beliefs. But what's happening here is that it's gotten to the point where, like, the idea is to create these enclaves, like, with the Epic City, which is now called the Meadow. They are still trying to, of course, construct this development, but it's been, pretty much stopped in its tracks right now because of a lawsuit filed by, Attorney General Paxton. It's still ongoing. It's not ended, but it's stopped right now. And, his allegations are this was set up to be basically an enclave, and that's not something that's legal. He also claimed that it was not following investment type rules, security rules correctly, and that's a little bit more complicated. But anyway, the gist of it is it's stopped for now. The tribunal thing that you were speaking about, that's been in the Dallas area for quite some time. Now, the question is whether or not this tribunal, which now, it's changed its website, it said it changed it because it wanted to clarify that they are not practicing Sharia law. They are simply giving advice. It is not something that is, you're not bound by this advice. It's up to you if you want to follow it, right? They say we don't do businesses. We're just doing, like, family issues, marriage, divorce. We're advising you. It sounded almost like a counseling session, right? However, past website, if you go back and look at it, and also what Attorney General Paxton is saying is that you're actually carrying this stuff out. You're saying this is what, Sharia law says, and those people are actually doing it. Now, do they have the legal authority to actually sit there and say, you got to do this? No. So, I think it's going to be tough to prove that this was actually had the power of law, because Texas has passed a law saying we're not going by Sharia law. So I'm not sure what his strategy is there, but he's definitely saying that he wants to investigate to see exactly what they've been doing, how they've been portraying this, and whether or not it constitutes Sharia law in Texas. And of course, that's going to be a legal question that will have to be determined by courts if he does move forward with a lawsuit.
Being a little bit on the older side here, I do remember that when Islam was bringing itself into New York City to be as active, start the action, actually, I should say, in the 60s and 70s, they started out with the prison outreach. And their promise to them was, if you become Muslim, we'll provide you with job, we'll provide you with housing and everything else. We'll take care of you, and you'll have a brother on the other side. And they wooed a lot of these convicts into accepting Islam. Well, fine, they didn't commit crimes afterwards. However, they got their foot in the door. And I remember driving into work, and in New York City, you can't openly carry, and yet they'd be outside the mosque patrolling with rifles slung over their shoulder, and no one bothered them. And then we worked with the Shaman Patrol, which was the Jewish patrol, mostly in the Hasidic neighborhoods. Well, then they started opening up Muslim patrols right next door to the Shaman. And they would then compete. And of course, the Jewish guys got the short end of the stick because, they're new at this. They're not understanding the rules. Well, that even got to the point where if you responded to a mosque for an incident, the female cops had to stand outside. They couldn't enter. And I saw this going on, especially through the 80s and 90s. It just started to expand. And now we have in New York City, Mandami, where they openly stop traffic in the streets of Manhattan to do the noon prayers. They had a service in Times Square. You never saw a Catholic service or a Jewish service or a Baptist in Times Square ever. And yet they shut down Times Square for a Muslim service. And we're seeing the footholds getting into each and every state. So I'm curious, why are they concentrating so hard on Texas? Do they figure maybe if they break Texas, they've won the entire nation?
Well, I think, I certainly think that the Democrats believe that. They put so much money into the races down here, the Senate race, they've been after the Senate seats down here for decades. There was Beto O'Rourke, I guess you remember him. When he came, it wasn't super close, but it was closer than anyone expected, against Ted Cruz that one time. Ever since then, it's been like, Texas, we're going to flip it. We're going to flip it. But they put so much money into it, it's kind of, it's interesting. Money doesn't always equal, victory, as we've seen many times. But the fact of where is this money coming from, how much, and it's all, a lot of it's out of state. I'm wondering if the laws of how, this money is able to be obtained from out of state, maybe that's something that the states need to look at. Because, does somebody in Texas really want their election being swayed or influenced by money from California or anywhere else, really? I don't know if you could do something like that, but I've thought about that myself, all this money flowing in, and, it doesn't always work. So, that's one thing you can be thankful for. But I think, to answer your question about, why Texas, I think because there was a population here to begin with. And because of that, there was a core group. And because of that, more came, just like you see in Minnesota, right? And once you start getting a concentration of a certain population, then you start getting political power as well. There was the first mayor, Muslim mayor, ever was elected in the city of Richardson, which is really kind of like a city within Dallas, right? It's not, it's its own city, but it's right there smack in the middle of Dallas. So we call it the Dallas Metroplex area. That's why. But that person was just elected. This was last year. So, once you start getting that, then laws start changing, a lot of, obviously, rules will change. Right now, I think it's difficult, like this development out in rural Texas. There are a lot of, town folk that showed up. This is a small community. It's mainly Christian, Hispanic, and white, right? Demographics out there. And, they showed up and said, we don't want this. We're worried about it. We don't believe in Sharia law. We're concerned about, radicalization of, Muslim immigrants that have come into the country, or even some that have been here, after looking at the DC situation where, someone was executed, those 2 Jewish residents there in DC that night, things like that. So there's a lot of concern, but I think it's got to do with it's just growing, and it's been accepted in the big cities, and now it's spreading out into these communities that aren't so welcoming. So I think you're seeing a lot of backlash now, more and more, in fact, and it's become a hot political issue down here now. And most of the Republican candidates that are running for something are just, in general, they are speaking out against it and trying to figure out ways to stop at least what they view as, or what they're concerned might happen with the radicalization, right, in the Sharia law. And, I think that's something that's going to be tough, because we have freedom of speech, we have a freedom of religion, freedom to organize, but at the same time, I had one of a recent, actually the story's probably going to come out later today about this. They were fighting over trying to add more Islamic influence into the social studies standards here in Texas. And they voted on it last week, and that got voted down. But part of it was, like, for example, suggesting that the Alamo had Islamic roots.
I was homeschooled, but I feel like I missed a chapter, if that's true. So,
well, it's kind of going through this kind of twisted path here that, the Moors conquered, went into Spain, and there was Spanish architecture that had, influence from them, and they were, Muslims. So therefore the Alamo is a Spanish style, building, and therefore it had Islamic ties.
It's hurting your brain to even try and say all that, because that's just ridiculous. I think also Texas, people come here and they use our openness in religion and things like that, and the right to assemble, they use it against us. And that's something that we expect. But it'd be interesting to see if Sharia law or Texas was ever going to flip blue. I think it'd be a cold day in hell, pardon my French. But if it did, there would be some big ramifications with the border. I think Texas has the most amount of borderland of any state, and so that would be probably not so good. But yeah, that was very, very telling. I actually wasn't very up to date on what was going down there, so thank you for breaking that down.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's funny because I think may have been about 10 years ago. I'm in the Bible Belt. I mean, the heart of the Bible Belt. And they tried to have these seminars that they brought into a non-denominational church, Love Thy Muslim Neighbor, where they brought in an imam, one from Charleston, one from Savannah, and trying to convince us to allow them to open a mosque nearby, which would include the call to prayer several times a day, and yet they won't let us ring our church bells. So I showed up with my Quran in hand, and they didn't realize I actually knew the Quran. And as they were starting to say certain things, I would interrupt. I said, "But sir, you didn't finish the actual sentence and the meaning of it." And one of them, I can still quote this one, love thy Christian and Jewish neighbor. But he didn't finish that, because the rest of the sentence was, before the Prophet Muhammad, meaning before Muhammad was born, it was okay to be friends with the Muslims and the Jew and not the Muslims, the Christians and the Jews. But once Muhammad came on the scene, that's no, that's forbidden. And all of a sudden they said, "Oh, she knows the Quran and she knows somewhat about Sharia law." And after I asked the third question, they said, one guy started standing up and saying, "Sit the F down." They stopped him and they said, "Well, miss, you've asked too many questions already. Someone else should ask a question." And they would not receive a single question or anything from me after that point.
Wow.
Awkward.
Yeah. Wow. Well, one of the politicians down here said, in their view, it sounds like the angle that the conservatives are going to pursue here in Texas is that Islam isn't really it is a religion, but there's aspects of Islam that isn't religious and should not and is not in their minds protected by the First Amendment. And that has to do with politics and government, because, when used as a layout for that, it's not compatible with our laws, is what they're saying. So I think you're going to see people try to split that and say that Islam is really more of an ideology instead of something that is a religion. Now, I don't know how that's going to work out and how that's all going to play out, but I think that's going to be a tactic that you're going to see in some of these states. Texas, by the way, is not the only state experiencing this. These enclaves have been suggested and attempted in Oklahoma, in Florida. I heard 2 cases about that there. So even in Arkansas, I believe. So this isn't something just happening in Texas, but I think there's been enough uproar here in Texas where it's really starting to, get a lot of attention. And it's also getting more attention elsewhere in the country, I believe.
Yeah, because what I said is that I believe that communism and Islam have a lot more in common than people actually understand. Why else were the terrorists being trained by Moscow and being sent back out into the world? Because under Islam is your government. And it is your religion at the same time. Same with communism. Communism is your government, but communism is also your religion.
Yeah.
You're not praying to a god, but you're just hoping that communism keeps you alive. The same thing under Islam. And that is why the two of them can work so well together. And that it's so antithetical to what it is to be an American.
Until if they ended up accomplishing their goal, then, one of them would cannibalize the other. So, that's what I think, people don't really look at when they're looking at all this, is that, those communism and Islam aren't really compatible either. So in one of these countries, hopefully it's not the United States that becomes a theocracy or a communist country, but if it ever happens somewhere else, I think you would see a battle then between those two ideologies, and I'm not sure which one would win.
Oh, I don't know. That is a good question. Which one will survive in the end? And I think you're going to find more fanatics in Islam than you would find in communism.
maybe so.
Unless they're Chinese.
Neither is a good option. More people have died under communism, the communist and socialism systems of government in the world than the number of wars. Millions and millions have died. You think about Pol Pot, you think about Stalin, you think about Mao, all the horrible incidents that happened and all the people killed under those regimes.
Yeah.
So,
that's exactly right. What you were saying earlier about Texas.
Look at Iran. Look at how many people were slaughtered there, just in December. So, not good.
Well, go ahead, Hannah.
I'm sorry. I think I'm working on a delay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What you were saying about Texas earlier is right. It's kind of just like a magnification of what we see across other traditionally red states in the U.S. I mean, my home state of North Carolina is predominantly red, right? And we do have some Muslim enclaves. We do have enclaves of illegal alien communities, but it's always in the hubs. It's in the equivalent of your Austin or your Dallas. It's in our Charlotte. It's in our Raleigh. Same thing for South Carolina, which she mentioned, Charleston, or what was the other one? Savannah. It's the same thing you see. It's just that Texas is so big, and their opposition to left-leaning change is so strong that it makes national headlines. But I do see similarities across the entirety of the U.S. So I don't want to keep you, Annie. Are we going over? Where's our other guest?
That's what I was just checking on. I'm just checking with his agent to see that he has the correct signing.
Well, then I'll keep you. You wrote another article on ICE's worst offenders and how, we hear this thing where, personally, I don't think it's enough where we say we're only going to go after the criminal illegal aliens. And then people say, okay, I'll draw the line there. I mean, I think if you're here illegally at all, you've got to go. Here's your bags. And we're very nice. We'll pay for your plane ticket out. But that's neither here nor there. What you focused on in your article is that we are going after a lot of the worst of the worst. And these guys are not. These aren't your regular, theft type of criminals. These are bad mamma jammas.
Yeah. And I mean, I think people don't get a lot of that. I mean, I know a lot of people actually were, discussing that article, from what I was seeing online. And I think that people are probably hungry for that information because, you hear about it, you hear the administration say, oh, worst of the worst. But you really don't see a lot about that. So we went in and tried to get as much information as we could, more than was just out there. Sometimes it's very difficult, though. A lot of places didn't even want to give us more information on what exactly happened. But we dug in there and got whatever details we could and put out at least 10 of them. There were more, of course. And even as you're working on these, there's others that come up. But there's a lot of them. There's a website you can go to. It's actually called Worst of the Worst. And you can go in there and look. Not all the cases are in there, of course. Don't expect to find all of them. Some of the ones we reported weren't in there yet. Some of them were, but it's very basic. But you still at least have the opportunity to go in there and look. And you can see for yourself, and I think that's why they set that up so people could see because, the message, if you're talking about mainstream media, it's just not out there. They're not going to do a story on that. They're just flat out not. Fox News would, and some of the other, center or, center right publications are going to, discuss it. But otherwise, you're not going to see much about that.
We have a very similar database. I hadn't heard of Worst of the Worst, but we have one that we try to keep up to date at our website for FAIR. And I think it was actually Texas, where you live in Texas, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it was Texas Department of Public Safety or something like that, when they arrest someone, they put the citizenship status up for a long time. They had that up there at this database. And so you could see like, oh, not only did he beat up this grandma, but he's also here illegally. Or not only did he, touch a child inappropriately, but they're also here illegally. And so I think if other states could follow the blueprint that Texas has laid out, and I haven't checked that database for a little bit of time now, but I do think that they still have that up and running. And if other states, that would help, that alone, for people to see, it's not always our American constituents or American citizens that are committing these crimes. And they are sometimes very horrible, like the one in Charlotte on the light rail system, where that young woman, a migrant in and of herself, who was here legally present, got stabbed. I mean, it's just, and then these people are here, and these woke, Soros funded judges with this revolving door of justice, as Annie likes to call it, where you've got a rap sheet as long as a CVS receipt, yet you're still on the streets. That's an issue regardless of your citizenship status, if you ask me. So
it is that I think that's the only way that's going to be fixed is if Congress acts. And as we know, that's, it's at a loggerheads right now. It's just not going to happen. It's so divided like that. I don't know what's going to end up happening with it, but I think trying to get something through on that's going to be, just like, voter ID, I mean, most Americans, regardless of whether they're, Democrat or Republican, they approve of that, but they can't even get that through.
Yeah.
So, I think that the court system and the way that you're allowed, and the DAs and how you're allowed, to use your own judgment on whether or not to prosecute, how to pursue. It was a great idea for a while, but again, it's just like a lot of the freedoms of our country. I think that's been abused. If you got someone with a particular ideology and doesn't care about really what the law is, or whether or not it hurts someone or the community that you're serving, and you just stick with that ideology, well, that's not the spirit of how that position was created. It was created to be voted on by the citizens, supposedly to serve the citizens, not to serve an ideology.
Yeah, it's strange because here, my listeners know I'm here in South Carolina. I fled New York just before Hillary Clinton got sworn in as senator. I swore I would not live in a state that elected her. So I left. But here, our sheriff had worked with the 287G program, which Hannah and I love the program and has been touting. We used to have it published once a week, people who are arrested. And if the person was here illegally or did something that is worthy of the INS taking a look at them, if they're here, even though legally, you would see they're held for detention for INS. And they would publish it in the paper. And now for the last 7 or 8 years, I have not seen one arrest being published anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the outcry from the woke on the left is so unbelievable and actually insensitive to everyone else. Because wouldn't you like to know whether or not your child is attending a school where the teachers there are properly licensed and vetted, and they're not being taught by a pedophile or by an illegal alien that has a criminal background? You want to know that who you're living next door to? This is what friends and neighbors used to be about, knowing who's around you and looking out for each other. But somehow or other, we've lost that in our society. Yeah. And I think it's now all for me and not for thee. Look at me. Look how much attention I get, rather than saying, how can I help make your life better? And that is the biggest problem we're facing.
He called that out on its face at the most recent State of the Union address. He said, I want you to clap or stand if you are more for Americans than you are for illegal aliens. And they stopped. I mean, what optics?
I said that is telling you who to vote for. Take that and use it in all your campaign material. Use the video shots, use it all, and just drench the people.
Yeah, I think it's really what it's about, this idea that they're coming here to work and to have a better life. And I agree that most of them probably are doing that. But why not then go through the process like everybody else? Go through the legal process. I haven't talked to very many people at all that have a problem with legal immigration. The people that I talk to have a problem with illegal immigration. And, even people that have come here, they're new citizens, but they went through the whole process. They don't like illegal immigration. It's like somebody's skipping line, Why didn't you do it the right way? They do it the right way and they're not rewarded for that. The people doing it the wrong way are rewarded. And, it upsets a lot of them, and I don't blame them. It's like skipping line. Nobody likes that.
Well, when Nick Adams was immigrating here to the United States, I had him on the show, and I got to look at the other side of legal immigration and what it costs per individual, the legal fees and the filings and everything else, and the appearances they have to make and the interviews they have to go through. And it's years before they even get a legal residence, a permanent, officially legal residence.
Yeah.
And it's even years beyond that before you can be sworn in as a citizen.
Yes.
And yet we open the door for illegal immigration. You commit a criminal act to begin with to come here.
Right.
And we're supposed to reward that with you with a pathway to citizenship. Wrong. The one who are doing it and following the law and the people's wishes, they get treated like crap, and we open the door wide. And, oh, here's your free Obama phone, and here's a $500 credit card to spend on whatever you want. And oh, by the way, we don't have any additional housing for you, but we'll put you up in this 5-star hotel.
Don't get Annie started about the Obama phone. It really triggers her. But no, Annie, you're right. I mean, under the previous administration, they were derelict in duty and streamlined pathways to citizenship by circumnavigating Congress. And we're trying to clean up that mess right now. But if we spent even half the amount of time that we've been incentivizing illegal immigration into streamlining the legal immigration process and making that easier and fixing the certain caps we have on different visas, or really just looking into how to make this just an easier process for family units, blah, blah, blah. We would, but we can't focus on it because we can't even get Congress to pass, like Darlene was saying, voter ID. So, I mean, how the heck are we going to focus on legal immigration when we're so busy dealing with the illegal migrants that are already in the country, so busy defending our border, and then arguing over common sense legislation? I mean, when does it end? And so I'm someone who also believes that there are certain benefits that a legal migrant brings in comparison to a illegal migrant, and we need to stop incentivizing mass migration illegally. But like I said, we can't even focus on streamlining the legal process, and it's unfair to people. If I've spoken to a handful of legal migrants that have been here, and they go through this grueling, expensive process. They finally become a lawful permanent residence. They're given their green card, and they have to wait another decade or so before they're actually a citizen. Yet they've been here for years, and then they see these migrants, these illegal aliens, getting all these handouts, and how the states, these sanctuary jurisdictions, continue to incentivize this migration machine, and they're pissed. I can guarantee it. So it's like we can't even touch it though until we can figure out how to get common sense legislation out the door through Congress. So that's my rant.
Well, I was watching today, and I wanted to see how you signed in your name when you came up on the screen here, because there was a representative, a woman, I think she's Texas, I'm not sure. McCormick was her name. Spelled the same way you just spell yours, Darlene. So I was curious if you could have McCormick on there. But she was promoting the temporary sanctuary status for Haitians. Now, I mean, Haiti had their hurricane damage. What was that? About 20 years ago?
I
think
there's been,
status?
Yeah, there's been some since then, but I mean, it's supposed to be, that's the Supreme Court's getting ready to hear that case as well. I know that Congress the House just passed something, trying to extend that. I don't know if the Senate would pass it, probably not, but then, Trump would probably veto it. But if it did get past the Senate, I wonder what impact that would have on the Supreme Court case.
Yeah.
Would the Supreme Court said, well, this, what if they said, well, Congress decided this, you vetoed it. So I don't know how that would work. That's an interesting question to me. Yeah, I guess it wouldn't pass. It wasn't a law. If he vetoes it, then I don't know. I don't know how they would weigh that.
That's just curious, because here, these people, most of them have bbeen here for at least 20 years.
That kind of does away with the word temporary, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
So, it's another impact on wokeism in the United States. But I was just curious if you could use McCormick when you signed in.
I don't know. Actually, I don't even remember. It's just automatic for me now. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't.
Oh man, yeah. And one of the things I also saw, because I had down here the worst of the worst, we covered that. Actually, we're covering almost all the subjects I wrote down on my notes. Right now, we're hearing rumors that Trump is going to ramp up his participation in campaigns in this midterm election. And we're already seeing things like Turning Point USA having rallies out there. I think Trump was going to that rally today. So do you think the Republicans and the conservatives are actually waking up and saying, hey, we better smell the coffee and get this moving here and now?
Well, I mean, that's been the plan. I mean, Trump says that's what he wants to do. I think wasn't he even talking about having another Republican convention maybe in the summer, perhaps. I'd heard that. I don't know if that's still part of the plan.
He loves a good party.
I'm sorry?
I said he loves a good party. He likes a good root and rally. Yeah,
he does. He loves those rallies, so he probably would do it. But
actually, I was at the last one he had in Charleston just before the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
I haven't been to one. My parents went to one in Fayetteville, and they loved the dance he does, where he's like,
right.
It's so fun. The people there are so cordial, so sweet, so nice. And I was trying to broadcast, but I couldn't get a signal out. And I saw a guy with a couple of these cops for Trump. And I said, oh, shoot, where'd you get that? He says, here. He hands it to me. I says, yes. So I'm standing in the back with the press waving my cop for Trump sign. So it'd be interesting. I hope he does take a more active role. But if you're going into a primary, my advice is don't endorse either candidate going to the primary. Endorse the one coming out.
Well, yeah, he's already done that in some cases, and some he hasn't. So in Texas, I know that he's endorsed some people, but like in the Senate race, he said he was going to endorse. He hasn't. I don't think he's going to.
Like I said, the best thing is to wait until you see whoever the Republicans choose and get behind that person 100%. Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm still running a Tea Party here, and it's now 17 years. And I got my meeting Monday night, and someone turned around and says, well, who do you have for your speakers? Well, the last two meetings we had statewide, and one going for Nancy Mace's seat. And I think there's 14 Republicans running. So
wow.
we're trying to focus and get the vote out here. But I think that's important that, we're on the cusp. And midterm election is a low turnout.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag. But if the Republicans don't get out and vote, the midterms, it's not going to be pretty for them. And Republicans don't seem to be as motivated to get out and vote as Democrats. I don't know how that happens, but that seems to be the case. But if they don't get out and vote in the midterms, it's not going to be pretty.
When you say that, do you mean historically, or do you mean that?
I think historically, because you look at it, I mean, unless it's a presidential race, okay? On years that it's a presidential race, Republicans tend to come out. But during the midterms, they just don't. And special elections, they just don't. That's how you hear, or why you see these, especially like in Texas, there was this really red district recently that they had a special election in for the Texas House, right? Or wait, I think it was the Texas Senate, right? It wasn't a national one, but anyway, there'd never been a Democrat. Well, the Republicans just didn't come out to vote, and the Democrat won it because there was only like 700 people that voted, like that. So they won, and now everybody, you know, this was a local.
I wonder why that is.
They're working. They got other things to do. And because the next it was for a special election, you know, for a limited amount of time. And so the person that was elected will never actually be able to do any type of legislation because we meet every 2 years here in Texas. So the next election will be this fall for the permanent seat. And then the Republicans, I'm pretty sure, are likely to come out and vote, and it will go back to being a Republican seat. But you can see how that strategy, though, doesn't serve Republicans well. It won't serve them well here either. You know, if they sit back here, you know, Tellerico, who's running for Senate, whether it's Cornyn or Paxton, he's got a huge war chest. In fact, I think I read the other day that it's more now, he has gained more than maybe any other it keeps the record keeps being shattered, but more than any other Senate candidate, in recent memory, something to that effect. And, so the Democrats have high hopes for Tallarico. They think that because he says he's a Christian, because he seems very moderate, at least on the surface, well-spoken, that he will attract a lot of independent voters. But if you listen to his platform and what he has to say, it's pretty far to the left, actually.
Yeah,
So,
I heard some of those things that he was saying. I was just shaking my head. And we're coming into our midterm, and there's a lot of seats. We've got the governor's seat up. There's a lot of other elected seats statewide that are up here, and the fields are crowded. We've got a lot of people running where you normally see 3, 4, maybe 5.
yeah,
You're seeing double digits.
yeah,
And the Republicans are putting up the candidates. I'm just hoping that we can get the people out to vote. And we have in the past 65% or more turning out on the Republican side, the lower numbers on the Democratic side.
yeah.
But I'm hoping that we can keep that momentum going here. Because I've always said all elections start off locally.
Yeah, I would agree.
And these are the very seats that we need to protect.
Yeah.
Do you have an update on what was it? Wasn't there a special runoff election between Gonzalez and Herrera? Or am I way behind the curve?
Are you talking about Tony Gonzalez?
Yes.
Well, sorry. Hang on.
And aren't there some allegations against him or something?
He's quitting.
Oh, okay.
So the other guys will win.
Okay. Yeah. I went to school with the other guy, so I was curious. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
he's got it, because Tony is not running. He dropped out of the race, and I think that I'm trying to remember if he actually resigned yet, but he might not.
I don't think so.
Did he drop out for a reason? I heard weren't there some allegations against him or
Yes,
something?
there
Yeah.
was.
That'll do it.
Fair.
Yeah. That'll do
Well,
it.
Darlene, you have been a good sport. You have stayed with us this whole time. Unfortunately, Mike Arnold ended up in a meeting. He couldn't join us, so we'll get him hopefully next time. But Darlene, you're darling to us.
Well, thank you.
She's great. She knows her stuff. So
Well, thank you, ladies. Y'all have a good day.
You
Thanks.
too. God bless.
All right.
Follow Darlene over at the Epoch Times, epochtimes.com. Well, Hannah,
she was a good
that's it.
sport.
Yes, she was. I mean, God bless. I got to call her a the Victorian thing. Give her a big thank you.
Mhm.
For that. But we'll be back next week. I have no idea who we got lined up yet, but I'll let you know.
But we'll be here.
We'll be here.
So, all right.
So, till then, we say good night, and we'll be back same that time, same that station. And here.
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Mourn for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe with God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. Do you hear our battle cry across America? We've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their lies. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Lord, for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. For the friends we have loved and lost, and we still believe in God we trust, in the freedom our forefathers granted us. We know it's not too late to save America. Save America. Let's save America. Together we can save